Hi, this is Yosef Bharti, and we are back with our yearly video predictions. And today we have with us once again Arpit Joshipura, General Manager of Networking, Edge, and IoT at the Links Foundation. Arpit, it's great to have you back on the show.
Thanks for having me.
This is a little thing that we do regularly. We get you every year. So our audience, they do know about the project, but just remind them what is networking, edge, and IoT at Linux Foundation all about. And if you look at 2026, what core problem is it solving as we head into 2026?
Linux Foundation is the home of open source and shared technology creation. And within that, we have projects under the LF networking and other sub-foundations that are creating the entire framework from core, edge, and access for open source projects. This is what the world is looking for to speed up innovation and speed up deployment.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. Now it's time for you to grab a crystal ball and share your predictions with us.
We have, or at least I have personally been doing predictions for the last decade, I should say. And these days, even ChatGPT can, or LLM can give you a prediction. So what we do differently is we go back and rate our predictions, whether we have done a good job or we messed up completely. So you can see all of that for the last 5 to 7 years. For 2026, I have 5 things that I believe are really changing the game. I'll start off with the one-liner and then I'll explain a little bit about it. Number 1, we believe that the AI native networks are crossing the chasm. What that means is we had networks that had autonomy. We had networks that had intent-based. But with the addition of AI and with the addition of code that actually allows you to go fully AI native, we believe that we are on track to cross the 50% mark across core, edge, and RAN this year. Now, it might be aggressive, but with AI-driven automation, with full maturity of that, AI-driven RAN innovation, and all of the shifts to AI-enabled, AI-native planning optimization and things like that, we are on the cusp of this transition point. The second prediction is a very interesting one because it is about APIs and agents. And we have tried for the last 5 years on exposing network value. And most of us have struggled with that. But the good news now is with APIs becoming mainstream and agents exploiting the ability to go into the APIs, we believe that agents and API will become a big revenue engine. So projects like Kamara, projects like Ecedem, projects like a lot of AI, agentic AI projects, they will all work together in collaboration and drive revenue for not just enterprise but also for telecommunications ecosystem. This is an exciting time now, and you can already see the Linux Foundation announced the Agentic AI Foundation to host projects like MCP. We have seen a tremendous growth in that foundation. And also we have seen that projects like Kamara and Nefio and Ecedem, they are all building off the Agentic AI Foundation and going into mainstream revenue generation for use cases in the enterprise world, whether it's finance, automotive, transportation, etc. The third prediction is on edge, where edge AI goes on the device, but the most important thing is the data stays at the edge. So we have figured that out through our LF-Edge projects that every time you want to run a model, you can't go to a public cloud. It's A, latency sensitive, B, expensive. And so what we have been able to do is we have been able to break through a lot of projects and allow for use cases in healthcare and manufacturing and automotive where cloud is not the first place to do AI. It's the edge. And so that's kind of where we are seeing a lot of traction. Projects like Edge Lake, like InfiniEdge AI, Eve, etc. They're all kind of focusing on that. Number 4 is a more broader prediction. As sovereignty shapes architecture, there's an AI data center boom. I don't need to be the one telling you about that. But what it's doing is it's creating a huge set of networking opportunities. As these data centers come along, they need to be stitched with a network operating system. And we have the only and the most deployed open source networking operating system called Sonic. Sonic becomes the Linux kernel of a switch in a data center, not just in the hyperscale, but also in enterprise. And Sonic has been modified for AI workloads significantly. And so that's kind of what we're seeing as a big trend now. And finally, I think we're past the point where I can predict that open source software will steal the spotlight, because we are entering an efficiency era. So for all the reasons I mentioned, which is innovation, speed of deployment, that open source enable, there's also a cost efficiency that in a post 5G hardware investment is critical. We have to do more with less. That's where open source comes in. We're seeing a huge investment in open source software in the RAN space, specifically with open source RAN stacks like Akudu, OpenCUDU, Duranta, ORAN Alliance Software Community, etc. So this is the year where RAN is going to be the biggest network element that's going to be shaken up significantly. And, 2026, we're waiting to see huge announcements through Mobile World Congress and beyond.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing these predictions. Can you talk about what are some of the biggest challenges or bottlenecks that you feel organizations will face this year?
At the macro level, we all know that there are geopolitical challenges that we are all facing. The good news on the geopolitics is that the open source community, specifically in networking, is a global workforce. And you cannot separate that workforce, because phones and connectivity need to work across countries, across politics, across regions. And so with that said, while it is a challenge on ensuring that data, specifically data, stays within a region or a country, connectivity becomes that much more harder. And we have projects that are centered around the region. So for example, projects like Silva, which are essentially LF Europe based, because they have included a lot of EU requirements, whether it's CRA or security or things like that. And we are starting to see projects that are country specific, but with a global, build on global infrastructure. So that to me is kind of the only big thing when it comes to keeping an eye on. And so far, open source has been able to manage and navigate the geography and the physical boundaries.
Now, when we talk about challenges, but there are also opportunities, what are some of the biggest opportunities that you see will arise this year?
If I talk about just telecommunications and networking, we are in this phase for the next 3 years where 6G standards are being worked. 5G has been deployed. In fact, it has hit the maturity curve. And AI is kind of on the horizon. So the area and the network element, as I mentioned, that needs to have the maximum innovation going on is the RAN, the radio access network. And so we're seeing tremendous focus on AI RAN, AI in RAN, AI on RAN, and several of our projects are targeted for the RAN ecosystem. Projects like Duranta in LF networking, projects like Akudu that has been launched through the funding of US government to open source CU and DU and make it commercially available. And there's an AI element to that. So the opportunity is it's going through the disruption similar to what cloud went through, and similar to what the Linux kernel went through. And it's going through that disruption in the RAN now. And so that's the opportunity for us to take a leadership position globally and allow for code in 6G and allow for standards to kind of get that iterative loop very, very quickly.
What is your actionable advice for enterprise leaders? What should they start doing now?
The simple one-liner is open source is all about duocracy. Participate, join, become a member, attend events. If you don't do that, you will be sidelined because the community is going to move 10 to 100 times faster than your own individual innovation inside a company. And so let's work on it collectively on the shared asset or the shared technology. And by the way, 90%, 80% of the code we write in any product or services or solution is non-differentiated. So let's work on these non-differentiated assets together, and then you build your differentiation on that, right? So join LF networking, join Kamara, join Sonic, join LF Edge, join the Linux Foundation projects that you believe are important to you, and participate and contribute. The leaders are the enterprises that are contributing and leading are the ones that have a much higher ROI and a much higher productivity and a much higher efficiency. And in fact, they're the ones, knocking off some of the competitors that don't participate.
If I ask you, what is going to be your or foundation's focus or priorities this year to help users, the community navigate this future?
So from a Linux Foundation perspective, our priority and our focus has been on AI. And I know everybody says that, but let me double click that. What that means is every building block that a vendor A, B, or C thinks that he or she is better at it, but it's non-differentiated, we will be hosting them. We will be harmonizing them. We will be creating framework blueprints on that, which allows for the community to move faster. Because there's always a not invented here, and this is not my protocol, so I'm not going to use it. That mindset, and that never works. It's always simplification and harmonization that works. So our focus is to allow for foundations like Agentic AI Foundation. And that's why you see the growth. We have over 100 members now on Agentic AI Foundation, just because there is a need for someone to step up and allow for collaboration and harmonization of things like MCP. And where do you draw the line on MCP versus domain-specific AI? So how do agents work with APIs? How do agents work with the network? All of those thought leadership areas is what at least my personal focus is on, and the foundation's focus is on.
Arpit, thank you so much for joining me and share your predictions. And as usual, I look forward to chat with you again. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.